The Democrat leader in the US Senate, Chuck Schumer, says President Biden's multi-billion-dollar COVID-19 relief plan will be implemented with or without support from the Republican Party. This news comes as the number of coronavirus cases in the US passes 25 million. The UK has identified 77 cases of the coronavirus variant first detected in South Africa. Cases have been linked to travellers arriving in the UK rather than community transmission. Ministers are due to meet on Monday to consider imposing tougher restrictions on people arriving from abroad. Riot police in the Netherlands have used water cannon to break up protests against coronavirus restrictions. Demonstrators in the city of Eindhoven had gathered in defiance of a 9 p.m. curfew. Some threw fireworks and looted supermarkets. There were similar clashes in Amsterdam.
U.S. President Joe Biden signed 10 executive orders Thursday aimed at fighting COVID-19. He called for a full-scale wartime effort. Families of 62 people killed when an Indonesian passenger jet crashed into the Java Sea this month attend a memorial. Rights groups say at least 1,000 people have been detained in Tunisia after several nights of unrest. And Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga promises a safe and secure Olympics after media reports say the government wants the Games canceled because of the pandemic.
We start here in Tokyo, where the metropolitan government says it confirmed 986 new cases of coronavirus on Sunday. It was the first time since January 12th that the daily tally fell below 1,000. Tokyo Governor Koike Yuriko has again asked people to keep up their vigilance.
This is a crucial moment for all of us. The circulation of people hasn't dropped yet. I'd like you to stand firm here to set a course to the future.
More than 3,900 infections and 56 deaths were reported across Japan on Sunday. Over 360,000 infections and 5,100 deaths have been confirmed nationwide. Researchers say the Japanese government's travel subsidy program may have contributed to the spread of the virus. The Go To Travel campaign was launched last July, but it was suspended last month due to the surge in infections. Researchers from Kyoto University analyzed approximately 4,000 cases reported in a 4-month period starting in May last year. They found about 20% of them involved people who had either used the travel program or had been in close contact with its travelers before showing symptoms. Their analysis shows more than 100 travel-related cases emerged in the first 5 days of the campaign. That was around 1.4 times higher than the same period a week earlier. The figure for tourism-related cases was about 2.6 times higher. Researcher Nishiura Hiroshi was also on the government's first coronavirus task force. The group says more evidence is needed to identify policy measures that can balance controlling infection with restoring economic activity. Medical workers preparing to provide health care for the Tokyo Olympic Games are facing difficulties amid the coronavirus pandemic. The Games start in less than 6 months. With the coronavirus state of emergency still in effect in some parts of Japan, the organizing committee hasn't held briefings this month for medical staff. Sources say that medical workers will be given special training online, but so far no arrangements have been made. Healthcare workers are voicing concerns about the limited time left for preparations and securing the required number of staff.
We have to take care of coronavirus patients and prepare for vaccinations. On top of that, we're being asked to respond to needs at the upcoming Tokyo Games. We absolutely cannot do all of this.
The organizing committee says it's considering financial support for hospitals that agreed to lend some of their staff. One member says the committee will heed the opinions of the medical community and do all it can to be ready for the Games. Many athletes are also struggling to prepare properly. It's a problem that's impacting aspiring Olympians in a variety of ways and creating an uneven playing field. NHK World's Shirakawa Marina looks at how one judo hopeful is making do in difficult times.
Irish judoka Megan Fletcher is just outside the world's top 20. She's aiming for her first Olympics, but at 31, she knows it's likely her final chance to get to the Games. Fletcher is based in the UK, one of the countries worst hit by the coronavirus. The number of cases has exploded since a variant was found at the end of last year. When judo facilities at her training base were shuttered last March, she returned to her home west of London and started training with her coaches online. Stuck at home, she had to practice with either her younger brother, who was in a different weight class, or her non-judoka boyfriend.
I think that was challenging. I think in some respect I felt lucky that I could do some training, but it was still very different to what I normally would do, so it was quite frustrating.
On top of that disruption, a ban on freestyle practice called randoli made it almost impossible to get much ready. After months of cancellations, international competitions resumed in October. Fletcher fought in 2 tournaments, but was eliminated early in both. She realized she had to prepare better for the Olympics and now occasionally travels abroad to practice.
Being able to travel to see my coaches and also have different randori partners, because in the UK it's very difficult still for me. So to be able to go away is most important. So hopefully that'll be okay for us to be able to do. So I think for us that gives us lots of hope that our dream will come true.
Japanese judoka Mizoguchi Noriko has coached the French national team. She notes that athletes from countries with better training environments, such as Japan, France, and Russia, have done well since competitions returned.
Athletes from larger countries have conventional bases where they can hold training camps. Judoka from countries without that kind of strong support from their federation are left to work things out by themselves. In that way, it might be said that their training environment is pretty inadequate.
Mizoguchi worries that if the games are held under current circumstances, athletes in many sports will take part without proper preparation, which could undermine the core values of the Olympics. She says it's essential that ways are found to help athletes, possibly by inviting them to Japan ahead of the Games, while still keeping everyone safe until the pandemic is finally over. Shirakawa Marina, NHK World.
11 Chinese miners have been rescued after spending 2 weeks underground following an explosion in Shandong province. In all, 22 miners were trapped. The blast occurred on January 10th in Qixia City. It caused tunnels to collapse, trapping the workers 600 meters below the surface. Survivors were confirmed a week later. Rescuers drilled shafts to communicate and supply food and clothes. State media said on Sunday that 11 men had been brought to the surface using cables. 2 of the miners were reportedly injured or suffering from exhaustion, but 9 were able to walk by themselves. State-run China Central Television broadcast the operation live. People clapped each time one of the miners appeared. The survivors were blindfolded to protect their eyes from the light. Some put their hands together in gratitude. The rescue work continues as 10 people are still trapped. 1 is believed to have died. Thousands of protesters have reportedly been detained across Russia. They are calling for the release of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Reuters reported that around 40,000 people came out on Saturday in Moscow. The authorities said the rally had not been authorized. A human rights group says at least 3,200 people were taken in at more than 110 locations. Observers say it was the largest number of people detained in demonstrations in the country in recent years. A survey showed that 40% of the protesters were taking part in a demonstration for the first time. Many of them were in their 20s and 30s.
I came here not just for Navalny, but for myself, for my future, and for a free future of Russia, where people will determine its future instead of a gang of thieves and killers.
Navalny was arrested last Sunday after returning from Germany, where he had received medical treatment. He is believed to have been poisoned last August with a nerve agent used in chemical weapons.